So welcome back to my series where we'll be going over 2025's AP CSA FRQ problems. This video we're going to be tackling question 2. So if you haven't seen my first two videos where I walk through part A and part B for question 1, make sure to go and check that out. But today we're going to be diving into question 2. So let's get right on into it. So this question in particular says that we will be creating a class called signed text. This signed text class is going to contain a few different methods, and those methods are going to be used to include a signature as part of a string of text. And we have to write that complete class, which will contain basically one constructor and two methods. So this is going to be kind of the start where we'll start at, and then we'll kind of dive into this. So the very first thing, the constructor, is going to take two parameters, and that first parameter is going to be a first name. The second parameter is going to be a last name, and it just mentions that the length, right? It gives us a precondition that second parameter is always going to be greater than or equal to 1. So we'll have at least one character in it. So that's going to be the first thing. The next thing that we're going to be doing is writing the get signature method. That's going to take no parameters, so no arguments passed into it. And its purpose is going to be to return a signature string based off of these two rules. So if the first name is empty, then we're just going to return the last name. If the first name is not empty, then we're basically going to return the first letter of the first name, a dash, and the last name, all concatenated together. So that's going to be the get signature method. And then finally, the add signature method. This is going to be our way of returning a revised copy based on the parameter that's passed into it. Basically, we have a couple of conditions. So if the signature does not occur in the string parameter of the method, then the return string is going to be that parameter with the signature added to the end. If the signature occurs at the end, then we're going to be returning the string thing that we passed into it without any alteration. And then finally, the last condition, if the signature occurs at the beginning, we're basically going to be returning the original string that's passed into it with the signature at the end. So the first and the second will look identical, the return value. The second bullet point will basically be that string returned to us. So one of the nice things about these question 2 and these types where we're writing class is that we can actually scroll down to this table, which gives us a few different things. So the first thing that it gives us is essentially what is going to be passed into it. So this is going to be the constructor, and these are going to be the two arguments, right? The next thing, right? So it tells us how get signature is used, how the constructor is used, and then it also, if we scroll down a little bit, it tells us how add signature is used as well. It also tells us what the method call would be, right? So the input that we're going to be passing into it, or sorry, the return value, and then it gives us a small explanation here on the side. So this is very helpful if at any point you get confused based off of the instructions up above as we're writing this class out. So let's jump into it and take a look at what the code would look like for each of these. Okay, so I've gone ahead and created the class, the signed text class. So right away, just by creating this class, I'm in the right name, we already get some points. So that's one of the beauty of this thing that we're going to be writing. So the first thing that we're going to be writing is the constructor. So we know that the constructor will map the name of the class. So that means that our constructor will be called signed text. And it says that it will take in two parameters. One of them, it says, is the first name. The second is going to be the last name, right? So with this is essentially hinting at that we need to actually store these somewhere. So that means that we need to jump up here and actually create two instance variables to store it. So we're going to declare these as private. This is one of the other things that we want to make sure that we always do so we get full points. But we're going to declare two private instance variables that are going to hold our values of this. So the way that our constructor will look, we're going to reference first name. The reason we have to use this here is because we actually name them the same thing. If we name them differently, we could omit this. But in my case, and what I always tell my students, this is good practice just so we know that we're referring to the instance variables. But that is optional if you use different names. So this is basically saying that we want to set the instance variables equal to the things that we're passing into here. So right away, this is our constructor, and we've already completed 1 out of 3. So the constructor is pretty straightforward. We're just going to set the values that we pass into it. Okay, the next method that we're going to be writing is get signature. So it tells us that we're returning a string and that we are passing nothing into the actual method. So essentially, right, it tells us that if the first name is equal to a empty string, right? So first name doesn't have anything in it. We're just going to return the last name. Otherwise, we're going to return that formatted. So let's go ahead and do the case where first name is empty. So we can verify this by just essentially checking using equals, because equals is how we compare objects. So whenever we are comparing objects, we want to use the equals method as opposed to the double equal sign, which is only used for primitive. That is so that we do not make mistakes and actually compare memory addresses as opposed to the actual content. So that is one thing that I've emphasized with my students. So here we're just going to check and see if it is empty. If it is, we are basically just going to return the last name. So very straightforward for this condition. Now, if we do not come into this condition, then we are going to return that formatted string. So the formatted says that we want to take the first character of the first name, right? So we can use our substring method and we can specify the beginning index and the one index, right? This is going to that this ending index is not inclusive. So this is basically going to say grab the first character, so up to 0. We're then going to concatenate a dash, right? So we can concatenate a dash like this. And then we're finally going to concatenate the full last name just like this. And this is what we're going to actually return. So this right here is the get signature method. So we've already got the constructor down and the get signature, and we only have the add signature method left. Okay, so for the add signature, I created just at the top what it is that we're going to be doing. So the first case is if the text does not contain a signature at all, then we're simply going to return the text with the signature at the end. If the text contains the signature at the end, then we're going to return the text unchanged. And then finally, if the text contains the signature at the beginning, we're going to return the text with the signature removed and at the end instead. So the nice thing is that we can grab the signature because we have already created a method that gives us the signature. So we're going to reuse get signature, right? Regardless of whether or not we wrote it right or not. Same as question 1, we can just assume that it works as intended. So I'll create a variable called signature, and I will simply call get signature and save that into a string. So this will be the signature that it is referring to that we're going to be adding at the end of each of these conditions. So in the first case, let's take care of the first one. If the signature does not exist anywhere in the text. So we have a string method that is called index. So index of lets us pass in a string. So in this case, we're going to search text, right? And we're going to search for signature. If it does not exist, we know that it does not exist if the return value equals -1. So if it equals -1, that means that signature does not exist anywhere inside of text. In this case, this is going to be our first case. We're simply going to return text with signature concatenated at the end of it. So this first one kind of takes care of this first case. The next case, right, we can actually do an else if, right? So the else if will basically we'll use this to take care of the next case. So with this, you have a few different options. We're still going to search for signature. So we're still going to do the same comparison. However, what I'm going to do here is actually search. I'm going to skip down to this third bullet point and use this to search and check for this condition. The reason for that is because checking if something is at the beginning versus attempting to do some math and check if it's at the end is going to be a lot easier. So in this case, we can check if signature exists at the beginning simply by saying if this equals 0. If it equals 0, then we know that signature occurred at the very beginning. Now, checking if it was at the end is going to be a lot more difficult because we're going to have to take the length of signature and then try to match it up within text. So it's going to be a lot more convoluted. So I'm going to opt for the easier route and just check, in this case, if it's at the beginning, and I'm going to use the else to account for the other case where signature is actually at the end. So this is going to be the case where it's at the beginning. So if it's at the beginning, we want to remove signature from text. So we are going to return essentially a portion of text. So we're going to do the substring. Basically, what we can do here, we can set a beginning index, and we're going to grab everything after that beginning index. So the beginning index that we can use is actually the length of signature. This will basically make sure that we start, if signature, let's say, is 5 characters, then we want to basically start at the 5th index, right? And that will make sure that we skip over signature. This will be a way for us to make sure that we omit signature. What we can then do here is we can then concatenate signature at the end. So we have effectively only grabbed a text, the part that is after signature. So just an example, if we had the text was something like hello and our signature was Fox, Fox is going to be 3 characters, right? And this is going to be the case where it's at the beginning. So something like this. And then we're going to start at index 3 because it's 0 base, 0, 1, 2. We're going to actually start here. So this will give us exactly what we want. Then finally, in the next case, the final case where signature is at the end, we are simply going to return text, and that's going to be it for this one. So this is going to be both methods, both the get signature and the add signature. And we are using get signature in here to actually get the signature and then the constructor. So this is going to be the entire class, and this is going to be the entire part for problem 2. You can use the examples given to kind of check behind yourself and make sure that you have covered all your bases. But let me know down and below in the comments section. Let me know if this is something that you got, if you got a different answer, and hopefully you got this one correct. And I will see